Hello and welcome back to the History of Video Gaming. My name is Ben, and join with me as always, my good friend Wesley. How you doing, Wes?
I'm doing great, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's been a very holiday themed weekend. This past weekend was it Thanksgiving? No, that was weekend before.
Yeah.
I'm just in like that kind of like post-coma,
Right.
I think it was last weekend, wasn't it? It was like 8 days ago,
Yeah. No, it was like a week ago.
Yeah.
We don't even know what day it is. Yeah. I had turkey today for leftovers, so I don't even.
Yeah. But so we're kind of in the sweet spot of barely waking up and just enjoying the relaxing holidays. So I'm doing great.
Yeah.
And we got a lot to talk about today. We got some great games and I think a fairly interesting special topic. But before we go into that, Wes, what have you been playing this week?
Well, I was going to start off by saying, I've been so busy. I haven't been playing games. But then I realized, even though I have been busy, because I was doing a community theater performance type thing over the weekend, I somehow managed to play like 2 games that I haven't played in a long time, and one that I'd never played before.
Yeah.
The first one is a game called Human Fall Flat, which I briefly mentioned to you, and it's been out for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But 2 of my friends started playing it recently and got me into it, and it is like super fun. It's one of those ones where it was a $15 game. I don't know how long I'll play it, and it's definitely a lot more fun when you have other people playing with you. But it's like you're just these little like doughy, fudgy kind of characters that can either be faceless or have like all these weird costumes and stuff. And it's a physics-based puzzle game where you have to kind of jump around, jump over stuff, move boxes around, run batteries with electrical wires, and a bunch of other like crazy stuff. Like you get to these one things or to just giant swinging hammer pendulums that can hit you, make you fly off the map. It's very comical. And also as like a platforming physics game, part of the comedy is that like your character can't really do any of the platforming that he needs to do very well. It's just like you like lift your arms straight up in the air to try to grab onto stuff, and you have to look straight up when you do it, and then you have to look straight down to pull yourself up over ledges. So it just makes for some really good times. And I think it's got a pretty decent Steam Workshop community. So I'm excited because I'm pretty sure there's map editing, and I don't know how recently that started, but the base game only has like 10 levels, which are very fun, and I've played through most of them so far, but I'm already looking past that and hoping that there's some good community stuff out there.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know if there's any vetting process, so we'll have to. It might not be like Super Mario Maker where you actually have to be able to beat the level, but still, either way, it should be pretty fun.
Nice. That sounds fun. It seems like I've seen a lot of videos on it stuff, and it's definitely one of those games that has like a healthy amount of jank,
Yeah, like just the right amount, like.
Yeah, to make it fun.
Yeah. When you glitch out in that game, or like you just do something horrible, it works because it's just such a goofy game. But definitely a multiplayer game. My friend said he played it by himself, and it was just like not fun at all. And I could totally see that. If you're not joking around with your friends and like trying to throw your friends off of cliffs and stuff, it's not nearly as fun. But the other one I wanted to just briefly mention is I recently, just last night, showed you Unturned, which is, we played it in college as well, but we started playing it again last night. And it's one that's like, I don't know if it's a good game. In fact, I think it's probably a bad game. Yeah, but it's still kind of fun. And in like weird ways, it's like Minecraft meets Daisy meets like Rust and like a bunch of other weird stuff, but then it just has the aesthetic of like Gumby Minecraft. It's very weird. And I don't know how much more I'm going to go into that. I might talk about it later once I've played it some more, but it's a weird one. It's free. You should check it out if you haven't heard of it, and you can either laugh at it or have a fun time with it.
Yeah, it's a good, 1 or 2 nights of fun, I think.
Yeah,
for free.
Exactly, yeah, and it's a free game, so like why not? There's not like ads everywhere, and once you can navigate the somewhat unintuitive menu system, then you're good to go. Mm-hmm. But that's enough about what I've been doing for this week. What have you been playing recently?
Well, it's kind of embarrassing, but I've just been playing more StarCraft like all day, every day. Not really, but I have been playing quite a bit. My every goal, like when I log on, I'm like, can I finish tonight at a 51% win rate? Because if I can do that, I'll be moving up slowly but surely.
Yeah.
And it's been working. And I actually got into Diamond League, which I've only ever been in once or twice ever. So
that's awesome.
It's like a pretty big accomplishment for me being there, and I've played many matches in there and feel like kind of comfortable in Diamond 3. So yeah, that's it's been pretty fun. I've been getting back into it pretty hard. I don't think I'll be able to advance much more unless I redo my hotkeys and stuff, or basically just stop using the F2 select all army units button. But
right, that makes it's so easy to do that though.
Yeah. But yeah, I had a pretty good streak in maybe a couple of days ago where I just kept versing like people that would turtle up, right? And whenever I see someone like make a wall outside their base, I'm like, they don't want me to get into that wall, so I'm gonna do that right now.
Right, yeah, that's when you gotta harass.
Yeah, so I just kept like doing like these early attacks, and they would have nothing over there. They're trying to tech for like a battle cruiser or something. I just go over there before it's done, and that's right. It.
Get the timing or whatever it's called, right?
Yeah, timing attacks. So yeah, it's like kind of a strategy I don't usually sort of implore, but it's been working well, so I just kind of been doing that. So yeah, played the campaign a little bit more, but I think that's kind of it, other than playing Unturned with you last night.
That's right.
It was fun. Brief
little bit of surviving and just trying to find water bottles that don't irradiate you,
Yeah.
That's
and
good.
It was also like, I got a lot of support from watching a lot of Twitch StarCraft 2, because the tournament's been going on, or the one we've had, like a fantasy that we've been doing with our friends.
Right,
it's like just wrapped up last weekend. The finals happened. So I was like totally into that.
That always helps get you so hyped for it too.
Yeah. And by the way, my favorite player of all time, whose name is Polt, he's just recently returned to Twitch and is streaming like full time. So
Polt's streaming again.
Yeah, he is. He had to do like 2 years mandatory.
His mandatory military service, right?
Yeah.
God, that's so strange.
And then he moved back to the US, so he's in like Texas again or whatever. So
Captain America's back.
I know. I love that guy. He plays like such entertaining matches. He's very aggressive, so he's like on the other side of the map like the whole game. It's like as soon as his army dies, there's another one like right behind it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, they're really fun to watch though. Yeah, I've been in that world pretty heavy. But I think with that, let's move into our special topic. We've got a kind of interesting one here, I think, because in 1976, Apple is founded and the Apple I comes out, the Apple I computer. So I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about that, because obviously Apple, not a small company anymore. I mean, they're not really that heavy in video game development, but they basically like invented platforms for games to go on almost,
Right.
Like I think about the iOS store and stuff.
Right, and the just computer industry in general, having this giant competitor out there that drive all the PC competitors on and stuff like that.
Yeah, and we'll talk about why they're important here in 76, because even right off the back, I think they do a couple things that nobody else was really thinking about at the time, and kind of started the personal computer revolution that's going to happen here soon. So let's get into the history just a little bit of Apple. It began with the two Steves, I call them, Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak. They were introduced like pretty early in their lives, and at the time, Wes, you might talk about this later, but Steve Wozniak, he was like building a lot of electronic stuff. He was building these like phone boxes that you'd be able to call somebody free of charge, and he was selling those out. Steve Jobs was more of like a business guy, although he was a technician as well. He actually worked for Atari for a while.
Oh,
he was building breakout circuit boards or whatever for Atari, which breakout's coming out here pretty soon, so that's pretty cool. After a while, Wozniak, he was like really interested in building his own computer, but he couldn't like afford one. So him and Steve Jobs both went to a computer club together that kind of had some computers around, and over time, Wozniak would build he kind of built his own computer, his own version of it, basically just pen and paper. But he couldn't afford to test it because mainly the microprocessors needed to run computer boards were just too expensive at the time. At the time, the two main ones were the Motorola 6800 and the Intel 8080, which we have talked about a little bit. Both of those really powerful microprocessors, but they were very expensive. They cost, I want to say, a couple $100 at least, maybe like $600-700. That's, already like inflated money, so that's like $600-700 in today's money. So
right, yeah.
And that was just kind of too expensive for Wozniak to really try. But a new company came out with a different chip called the MOS Technology 6502. And this microchip only cost about 1/8 the price of the other microprocessors of the time. So quickly getting into MOS technology, because I think this is kind of an important leap as well. MOS technology, it was actually a circuit, electronics company before this microchip or microprocessor development happened. So they were kind of in the business already, but the real thing that happened was at Motorola, the people that built the 6800, they, were selling that chip, and they were talking to people, and everyone's like, hey, this chip is like really expensive. So, it's hard for us to buy it. And so they were like, oh, well, let's make a cheap version of this chip. We'll still make it powerful, but it won't have all the nice features that the 6800 has, and we'll sell it to these people who can't afford it, because that's, a big untapped market. But Motorola was like, whoa, what are you doing, selling this cheap chip? We're not going to make money off that. There's no demand for that.
Right.
And so they basically just brushed them off, and all those employees, it was like, I want to say like 5 or 6 employees, like a fair amount, like left, and they just were like looking for another company that would accept this idea. And MOS Technology was like, hey, we'll take you guys. Which I want to say MOS Technology was actually based out of Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, which is like basically where I'm at.
Right, yeah.
So that's kind of cool. So they went over to MOS Technology, and they built their chip, the 6502, at basically 1/8 the cost of the other ones. But the problem was, again, you have these really cheap chips, but no like cheap computers to pair it with. And that's where the Steves came in, because Steve Wozniak took that chip, he built the Apple I with it. And then the purpose of the Apple I, there was kind of 2 main goals with it. Number 1, be user-friendly. Number 2, be cheap. So he basically built the computer part around the design of the cheap chipset, and now you had this personal computer that it wasn't like the fastest thing ever, but it was cheap, it was affordable, and all the components were pretty simple and cost-effective to sell. So over time, they ended up selling, I want to say like 200 some machines, all of them built by hand, the Apple I. And most of it was based on Steve Wozniak's designs. He did a lot of the grunt work, but Steve Jobs was there. He was helping more on the business front, and eventually he found an investor after going back to Nolan Bushnell to try to find an investor who Atari was like, we don't want it.
Right.
But Nolan Bushnell did eventually recommend somebody who did put money into the company and would eventually make it go public and start the founding of the Apple II, which I think is the bigger computer, which will come out next year.
Right.
And I found out they named the company Apple in part to be in front of Atari in the phone books, which I thought was funny.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Should have named them Aardvark, and then those Aardvark computers would be in front of everybody else.
I know. Everyone would have an Aardvark in their pocket.
Man, now I kind of want to start a tech company called Aardvark. That's pretty good.
It was really weird reading about it, because literally half of the information I read was like, this person was almost an investor and then pulled out, and this person was almost and I'm like, all these people would be billionaires right now if they had just...
That's
you never know.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm sure that's why it's fun to talk about, because you're like, yeah, this person would have made it, and this person would have made it.
Yeah.
All these people didn't like it.
Yeah, I was really surprised to hear Atari was like involved, kind of.
Yeah, I had no idea they even had like... I do remember, I think we might have talked about Steve Jobs working at Atari at some point before, but just the fact that they were even like affiliated at all is really strange to me.
Yeah, and then the whole like the MOS technology chip, I was like, wow, this is kind of revolutionary just by itself, the chip. And I will say MOS technology did get sued by Motorola. I didn't read to see what the results were of that, but as far as like, you know, the Apple One goes, that's kind of where I stopped my research.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah. Oh, one other thing quick. The Apple One had a TV as part of it. So you had a display you could actually read and text on the screen, which at this time, some of the computers, they were just like terminal based, you know, they didn't have any screen or anything. So that was like one of the big features of it. And it also had, was capable of running and saving programs. So that was also like another thing that was hopefully making it more accessible to people while also being cheap. So I think those are the two main advantages of the computer other than just being cheap.
Right.
So yeah, I thought it was very interesting how it started. Do you have anything you want to add, Wes?
Yeah, well, I did just have a couple more things that didn't slot in easily earlier, but about the Apple One in general. It did sell, I think it was 200 units total, and they were all made by Wozniak, and they sold actually in the first 9 to 10 months that they were marketed. And their retail price initially was $666.66 because apparently the Woz liked the repeating numbers or something like that. And I don't know if that was a quote. Maybe they were joking in an interview or something, but I like that idea that they were just like, yeah, it seems good.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I feel like to put that in perspective, like some of the consoles we're looking at are like $400. So it's not that much more. And you get a whole computer, you know?
Right. Yeah. When we're talking about like these consoles, which frankly can't do all that much depending on the console.
Yeah, a couple Pong games, you know?
Right, and this was an actual like personal computer that you could use. And yeah, the other stuff at the time, other computers at the time, to be able to use visual outputs or a keyboard like the Apple One was able to, you actually needed to have like separate hardware because the outputs on a lot of the computers at the time were just like LED lights that told you what was going on. And
oh yeah, like the Altair 8800.
Yes, like the Alta.
that.
That was, I think, one of the main competitors for it at the time that had those visuals to kind of tell you what was going on. Mm-hmm. And another just random fact that is really funny, if it is true, is that since Wozniak was the one who was like so involved in this, all the support questions were coming to him. So after they released the Apple II, which would come out in April of '77, the company started offering incentives to everyone who owned an Apple One to return it, so they could like stop getting all these questions about the Apple One. Because the Apple II was just like easier to troubleshoot, and they're like, we'll pay you, like give us back the Apple One. And apparently they just started destroying the Apple Ones once they got them back.
Oh no.
So it's like, I forget how many are left in the world. It's like 30 maybe or something, or like 20 that are on display in museums.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's just hilarious to me. And I guess they were just, I don't know what the reasoning was. I didn't dig too much into it, but the idea that they're like, well, we should probably destroy this thing because the Apple II's out now. It seems pretty good. And
I bet they're worth like millions today. Like if you have an Apple One. Yeah,
I know some of the, I don't know what the years were that they sold, but there were some pretty high dollar amounts for when they did sell. And just the final little tidbit is going along with a lot of the other people that we've seen who are making games, who are making computer programs at this time. Wozniak said Star Trek was a huge influence on him, and part of the reason that he wanted to help found Apple. So interesting to see how big of an influence that Star Trek has had. I'm just like, look at all this cool space technology. What if we did that in real life? And then all these people are like, let's make computers, let's make video games.
Yeah, I thought it was so cool that Atari was like involved in this story. I was like, wow, this is like a video game company like involved in the beginning of personal computers, you know, like pretty heavily, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like slow progress at times, but when you think about all the stuff that's going on in like 75 and 76, and even way back when we started, it's crazy how much progress and just all these innovations that were being made.
Yeah, even when they found their investor, I'm fairly certain the investor was from the Fairchild Company, which the Fairchild Channel, or Fairchild Channel F console is about to come out. So it's like, that's we'll talk about that more later. It's like a really important one, but I'm like, that's still like relevant too. It's almost like one industry at this point, like, you know, video games, computers, like they're together. in my mind in some way. So I just think that's so cool.
It is, yeah, it's very cool. But yeah, I think that's all I had to add on about it. That's the founding of Apple and the Apple One.
Yeah. And we'll talk more about Apple later. I don't think there's any games for the Apple One, at least not on the timeline. Maybe they had like tic-tac-toe, but I was like, no, well, we're not going to do that. But yeah, we'll definitely talk about it more. I do think there's a ton of games for Apple too, so like big old lists of them that I have to go through. So
that means we'll definitely be seeing Apple in the future and see what these systems were capable of.
Yeah. So why don't we head on over into the timeline? We'll see you guys then.
Hey everybody, welcome back after that beautiful musical interlude, as always. I can flatter you this time, Ben. You don't have to talk up yourself for the musical interlude that we don't know what it is yet.
Yeah, thank you.
So let's get started with our timeline. The first one we have up is an honorable mention called Universe 2 by either Sophadis or Sophadis, I don't know how to say it, that came out in 76. And this one basically just looks like Knockout by Ramtech, but in color. But other than that, we don't really have too much info on it.
Yep. And then we're going to zoom right ahead to the first one I rated this week. This one is the Odyssey 300, which I obviously was really excited to review because I love Odyssey and Magnavox, and I feel like they're just like a part of what feels good about this. They always, whenever I see them, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember Magnavox, you know?
They started us off so early on a good or bad note, depending on your interpretation, but they just...
I think a good note.
I think a good note, yeah, overall. It's always good to see their name pop up again.
Yeah, it is. So this is the Odyssey 300. This is, the third console, I think, third console since the original Magnavox, I believe.
Yeah, I believe so.
And this one's kind of a weird one because essentially a while ago, the Coleco Telstar came out and sold like 1 million units or whatever. And Magnavox was like, whoa, I want to sell 1 million units. So they literally bought the same chip that the Telstar did and put it in one of their consoles and just called it an Odyssey. Even though at the time they were working on upgrading the Odyssey 200, which is going to be the Odyssey 400, but this one was just squeezed in there just because they're like, we need to get on this market real fast, you know?
Right, yeah.
So I'm not actually sure how well this one sold, but it used the AY38500 chip, which was the same one the Telstar used, and as a result, you have basically the exact same style of gameplay and graphics and everything. I thought for a second this one had the English, you know, which is like the Magnavox staple.
Oh yeah.
But it actually doesn't. So I was kind of disappointed in that. But I guess if they just put this chip and just, you know, they bought the chip and just put it in a plastic thing and was like, here you go. I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
Speaking of the console itself, it was like this bright yellow, almost like race car yellow or something like that. It was I thought it kind of looked sleek, you know, it was kind of cool. You've got 2 controllers on it, which are basically dials looking things, you know, and 3 buttons. I think there was a reset, a ball speed, and the game, you know, which game you want to play on it. The controllers were embedded in the console. So another one where you guys have to be sitting real close to each other.
Right next to each other, yeah.
But, you know, the actual AY38500 chip is like pretty decent, honestly. The graphics are like fairly nice. It plays 3 games in this case. You've got tennis, which unlike I think almost all of the Odyssey games is only vertical. You know, they don't have horizontal because this is not their chip. You also have hockey, which is basically Pong, but you got 2 paddles per person. 1 paddle's on your half, 1 paddle's on the opponent's half, and they're in the same sort of vertical plane. The goals are also kind of a little smaller, so you have a little bit of vertical walls on each side of the screen for hockey. And then you've got what they called Smash, which is basically handball. And I'll talk about these games a little bit more when I get into my ratings, but you had those 3 games. You also had the screen itself. It did have sound. It did have on-screen scoring. And it did have, like, horizontal top and bottom lines, to make the screen look a little bit better.
It's always good, yeah.
Yeah, so it definitely wasn't a bad system at all. It just probably wasn't the most interesting.
Right.
Especially compared to Super Pong, which you did the last time, Wes.
Right,
so.
yeah.
Let me get into my ratings a little bit. Let's start with gameplay, because this one, I don't know. I was watching a lot of videos on this, and, tennis is, like, very standard. Hockey's very standard. Smash, which is the handball type game, I thought was incredibly badly done.
Really?
Because essentially you've got 2 paddles on the same vertical sort of plane or whatever, and there's nothing that distinguishes them. But how the game works is one person, the ball hits their paddle, it hits the opposing wall, comes back, and the other person has to hit it. But because your paddles look exactly the same and can overlap with each other, you really have no idea what paddle is yours.
Right, yeah.
Like, at all. And it was even confusing, like, let's say the ball passed your paddle and your opponent scored. Well, it just has automatic serve again. And I don't know, if you got the point, well, is it your turn to hit now, or is it your opponent's turn to hit the ball first, like, after somebody scores? It was just very confusing to watch and be like, who is who is winning? I had no clue. So I thought that one was kind of weird, but the other ones were fine, I guess. Overall, I gave the gameplay a 1.5 out of 10. Just not very interesting at this point.
Right. Yeah.
I have to say. And I will say, well, getting into my graphics, it is in black and white. That's kind of disappointing, I think. You do have on-screen scoring, but it's the kind where the score is on the screen the entire time. So the ball can get lost in there a little bit, especially if you're playing, like, hockey. You could have another paddle in there. It's kind of, I think, a little ugly. Because of that, I gave graphics 1.5 out of 10. Kind of standard. With Smash, it's, like, impossible to tell who's who.
Right.
So, yeah, I didn't think it looked that good. For sound, it did have sound, but it's the classic Pong sounds. There's nothing new, nothing original. I just gave it 1 out of 10 because it's there.
And I don't know how much they can even... I mean, I guess we'll see, because I don't... You know a bit more about the timeline than I do, but I don't know how much they could even alter the sound on a AY38500 chip, but maybe there was some in the future who do that.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I think the chip did have sound, but I'm sure you could have a custom sound chip.
That's true, if you added something extra that just kind of overrode that. Yeah,
because how the chip worked is it had, like, I forget how many ports. It was kind of, it looked weird. It kind of looked like a caterpillar with, like, 12 arms on either side.
That's right, yeah, right? And all the different pins on it had different features, and you could either not use or not use one of those pins, I think.
Exactly, so you could probably just not use the sound pin, put your own, and I think that would work, but so far, it hasn't really impressed me that much.
Right.
For relevance, I gave it 6.5 out of 10, a little bit higher than an average game, just because it's the Odyssey. They're a big name, big player in this scene, and they are using the same chip as the Coco Telstar, which makes this, I think, an extra interesting Odyssey one, because it doesn't resemble anything the Odyssey is known for, almost.
Right, yeah.
So I think it's kind of like that weird oddball out console, which could be, I think, very interesting to collectors and other people who are playing these older games. I think it's kind of a weird one. So it also, I want to say, was sold as a console TV bundle, which I don't think sold well at all. But that version had wired controllers for some reason. That was model 4305. So wired controllers sound nice, but otherwise, you've got basically the Coleco Telstar, but with an Odyssey label slapped on.
Right, yeah.
As much as the graphics do look kind of nice, and you do have multiple ball speeds. There is sound and on-screen scoring. It's like all the check marks are there, but it doesn't do anything else. Like, I was even looking at probably my favorite console from last year, which was it was the First Dimension Video Sport, and even that one had a robot game on it. And I was like, and it had custom sounds, and I was like, really? That was like last year, and this is still like the same old, same old. But I'm sure it was a very cheap, because it used that chip, and I'm sure it sold pretty well because it did have the Magnavox label on it. But I was kind of like wishing it was almost the next one, because I want to go back to, playing Odysseys that have English, that have, the 4-way Pong style gameplay and stuff.
Yeah, we love them for being the maybe not the best of their time, but the most interesting and the weird choices they make. Like,
yeah, they make a lot of weird choices, but that makes them unique,
Right, yeah, because everyone else is doing this one thing, and they're like, but what if we did something totally different?
Yeah, except for this one. This is like, somebody else did something and it sold really well, and they're like, let's just copy it.
Yeah, they caved.
Yeah, they did cave. So, yeah. Odyssey 300, overall, I gave it 2.5 out of 10. I think it still is a decent console, but it's not any better than any other console that used this AY3-8500 chip.
Right.
And I would say it's even kind of worse, considering some of the ones that come out later will have a couple more games and stuff. So, I don't know. It was like, I don't know. I thought it was cool. It did have all the check boxes checked, but it lost, some of the charm that the jank of the Odysseys are known for. So
yeah, absolutely.
And especially compared to like even the last one you did, Wes, the Super Pong, it had rainbow colors. It had like more games, it had, I think it just had more, it had the on-screen scoring that only showed up after a point,
I really
there's so
that.
many there's so many little changes that made it so much better than this one, in my opinion.
Yeah, that Super Pong is going to make it hard for consoles going forward. I mean, just even that weird thing that they did with the color is like, it's so good. All the black and white ones that we look at now, we're just like, I don't know, man. It's not that great.
Yeah. It's like, wasn't this like 2 years ago it looked like this?
Right, exactly.
It's kind of, I feel like it's compounded now because we've been following Pong since 72. And it's like, we already saw all this stuff first in the arcades, and then like consoles, like it was really bad, and now it's kind of looked like it did in arcades like 2 years ago, but it's still like, that was 2 years ago.
Right.
So,
consoles are just now catching up.
Yeah, so it was okay. I'm kind of glad to be done, honestly.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to the next one though, because I think the next one they're gonna go back to their weird English that I love. Putting it on.
Yeah.
So
we got to see the Odyssey 400. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. So I think that'll do it for me. Why don't you talk about your console, Wes, that you did this week?
Well, I think in very different ways we might have a lot of parallels in our reviews. In being something that doesn't live up to Super Pong at all. But this is different in the way that the Videotronic by Alpha Electronics, which came out in 76, was still a discrete component console. So it didn't have many chips or no AY or no like central large one, I think. Yeah,
it had many chips. Kinda.
I think that's how it works. I forget the exact distinction there, but basically it's different than all the AY3-8500s that we've been dealing with up until now in 76. And so the console itself was like the center console had 2 wired controllers on it, which is always nice. Wired controllers are good. The controllers were just 2 dials, one for up and down and one for left and right. So that tells you right away this is going to be an Odyssey style type console.
Nice.
And so it's looking up in that aspect of it.
I mean, especially with all the AY3-8500, like that's only vertical. So anything that's not that, it's like, okay, they could do something else now,
Right, yeah. And as much as we like the AY3-8500, we're going to be seeing a lot of them. So this is a nice change of pace. The console itself was kind of like long black box. It almost looks like one of those stage fog machines, if you know what those look like.
Oh yeah.
And it just kind of had like a kickstand in the front of it, so it was like always at a 45-degree angle, which I don't understand. It might have been ergonomic
Weird.
or something, so you could actually like sit down and play with the dials. You could probably put the stand down too, but either way, it just in general kind of looks like a fog machine. And so it had a gray plastic face on it and just had buttons for game select. And then interestingly, it had like little icons for each of the paddles, because I'll get into a little bit later how the paddles look different for each player in this game. And then just a little red LED, or I actually shouldn't say LED because I don't know if it was, but a red light under each of those logos that just lit up whenever the player won on the console, which is strange, but I mean, it's not plastic slider scoring, I guess. And so getting into the gameplay for this, it played 3 different games, which, like I said, with the controllers, all of them you could move both vertically and horizontally. And it played tennis, football, and squash. And all of these games, it was interesting that the ball like loses its speed really quickly for some reason. I mean, it's just the quote-unquote physics of the game, so it's interesting for some of the ones, the Pong-ish kind of games that we've played, where it kind of drifts for a while before it really starts to lose speed. But this, like, if you don't hit it and it goes across the screen like once, it actually can slow down and go to a full stop, which is real interesting.
Weird.
It's not that much of a problem, I guess, since it's Odyssey style, so you can like move over to it, but it'll just sit in the middle of the screen sometimes. It was a little bit exasperated by the fact that when I watched a video of somebody playing this, it was one guy switching controllers. So like in real play, it probably wouldn't be floating in the middle of the screen for that long, but it just felt a little weird.
Yeah.
And so tennis is just tennis. I don't really need to say too much more about it. Pretty much what you'd expect. 1 dividing line, 2 paddles, and hit it back and forth. Football is the same as tennis, except there were, in the 4 quadrants or the 4 corners of the screen, there were like semi-transparent barriers that blocked. And it was weird. I couldn't tell if there was a vertical barrier like straight up. And also there were some times when it looked like the ball was bouncing off of black space and not off of the semi-transparent barriers. For that, I don't want to necessarily blame the console. It seemed like the console was a little glitchy, but this could also be because the videos that we had available were somebody playing it in modern times. So this console might not have been operating as well as it was upon initial release. But either way, it did look a little strange the way that it's there was supposed to be a smaller goal because it's soccer basically, or well, football, which is why it's football. But now I'm confusing the terminologies of all that. And so there was supposed to just be a goal basically, but it just played a little weird how it actually bounced off of the walls and also where there wasn't a wall. And squash had the same issue where that's basically your handball. 2 players are on one side, and there's an invisible wall on the other side that you hit it off of.
That's the worst.
Yeah, so you hit the ball and it bounces, and you're like, okay, I guess we're playing squash. But one thing that is, and I'm going to use the word unique here, and the way I say that word might give away how I actually feel about it, but the scoring system for this console was really unique. It's a large white rectangle at the top of the screen that moves either left or right whenever somebody scores towards the side of whichever player scored. And after one person scores 4 points in a row, which is important in a really weird way, then it would reset back in the middle. And I'll touch on that at a later point, probably when I'm going over my graphics in just a sec here, because that scoring ends up being real strange unless I'm drastically misunderstanding something. But let's get right into it, because I already fed you guys the leads, and I need to kind of finish through with that. For graphics, I gave it a 1 out of 10. It's not great compared to what we've been seeing with even the chip consoles, where, at least if they're black and white, they have nice graphics. These were kind of like, I don't know, jittery and not very good, and it's just like black, a line, 2 paddles, a ball, and then that giant white rectangle just floating on the top of the screen. So nothing too crazy. The best thing that this has going for it graphically is that the 2 paddles look different from each other, which is nice. One is just horizontal lines with spaces in between it, and the other is vertical lines. So it is nice that you get that differentiation, and since it is Odyssey style and you can go on the other player's side of the court, you can still pretty much tell who's who. But other than that, the ball is just like a rectangle, which is weird. Not even like a square. It's like really elongated. And there's only one middle line, no border lines, unless, like I was mentioning, the videos just didn't accurately show it. But I'm starting to think it might actually just be the console didn't have any other border lines on it. And though the scoring is unique, it's weird how it's like tug of war scoring or something.
Mhm.
Because I'm pretty sure if an opponent scores when, say, you already scored 2 points, it moves over one to the right instead of going back to neutral or back onto their side. So basically you're like counting the fact that you're 2 against 1 by the fact that it's at the 1 mark on your side of the field. And
Right.
it's, unless I'm drastically like overthinking it, it just seems like really confusing because I score 3 in a row, the other person scores 2 in a row. It's at like my 1, and what does that mean? You know,
It means you're 1 up, right? No?
1 up, yeah. So it is. I mean, you could just always do it that way too, where it's just whoever gets to 4 wins, and you're not thinking about it as a cumulative score. And then this kind of scoring makes a lot more sense. So I guess that was part of it too. I was coming at it from the Pong perspective of where you have the score on the screen that just keeps incrementing instead of like you have to be 4 up to win. Which is kind of, I mean, it's sort of like real life rally point scoring or like the win by 2 in volleyball, that kind of thing. So it does kind of make sense. It's just weird, maybe realistic to the scoring in a way that it didn't need to be for a video game. And so going on to the sound, I gave it a 1 out of 10 for that. I really like, oddly enough, even though I gave it a 1 out of 10, the ball bounce sound in this is really good. It's like a light click instead of a beep. So it actually sounds like a ping pong ball. But the only problem with that is that there's no pong in this game. It's tennis, football, and squash. So it sounds like a really good ping pong ball noise for a console at the time, but there's no pong. So it's a little weird. It doesn't sound like a tennis ball. But other than that, it is a nice sound. But the reason I gave it such a low score, despite having such a nice sound, is that is the only sound. There's
no like game over or whatever.
There's no game over. There's not even any score sound as far as I could tell. And there's just 2 different pitch ball sounds for depending on which paddle hits it. So it's just that going back and forth. And since you can volley pretty quickly with this, because if you hit it in succession, same way that it can slow down really fast, if you hit it a lot, it speeds up really quickly. I just imagine like all these clicking noises going like really, really, really fast. And I could see that getting pretty annoying. So I don't know, it was good sound, and I'm always glad to see something that's different than other console sounds that we've seen, but I would have liked to see more of it, even if it was like the Pong buzzer noise for getting a point, just so there's some kind of audio indication of like, I got a point, other than just that clicking sound, despite being good. And also just rename your tennis to Pong so that it makes a little bit more sense.
I was just going to ask, did it make any noise when it hit those like bumper things in football, or was that just silent?
That was silent as far as I could tell.
Oh, God.
And it did seem like the videos that I was watching like had sound, and you could hear the console sound because I could hear the balls, the noise of the volley, but it was kind of strange.
Weird. Did it make a sound when it hit the wall in squash?
No, it didn't, because that was the same barrier as football. Yeah, exactly. Like it's not even like playing the clicking sound for that. And so onto my gameplay. I do really like that you can hit the ball fast, and because it's like Odyssey style and you can move horizontally, you can approach from different angles. But as I think we've kind of touched on before, I think in this kind of game or at least the way that this plays, that makes it a little less fun. Like something about being on rails in the Pong game, it makes it feel a little bit more polished. And it just seems like you can really easily be in the wrong place to block a shot. So unless you really get good at this kind of game where you're moving both knobs, the horizontal and the vertical, I could see it being pretty hard to actually get a good volley going. And so the game also seems to have glitches, and I want to say this, take it with a grain of salt, because it could have also been the TV that the person was playing on. But there was just like weird stuff where the ball got stuck inside the other person's paddle and it kept playing the same audio clip over and over and over again.
Oh, God.
And the player just had to like shake their paddle to get the ball out, and then it went flying to the other side. And there's just a lot of strange stuff that overall it's like, okay, you got these three things that we've seen done before, and we've seen kind of like the chip and a polished version of it, but this is just like all these games are pretty simple, but none of them are very polished in a weird way.
Mm-hmm.
So going to my relevance, sticking with the theme, I gave it a 1 out of 10. I had a lot of difficulty trying to find any background information about Alpha Electronics because there's actually a few different Alpha Electronics.
Oh, wow.
One is a local electronics store in California that's going out of business. So I hope that's not them because otherwise I'd feel kind of bad. And the other one was like a big electronic communications technology company, which could be because I know a lot of stuff who, companies who may have started in the 70s and then made a game, they kind of branched off and did other things.
Actually, just so you know, Wes, I'm looking at my sheet here right now, and I have listed that they're from Australia.
Really? Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah.
That could be. It was giving me a lot of American hits right off the bat. So it might be a more notable company in Australia.
Who knows?
But it's not that poor little mom and pop electronics store that's going out of business in California, thankfully. And just in general, it really kind of feels a little behind the times in 1976. So I'm not too surprised that it's so obscure, and I think it kind of earns a pretty low relevance rating. So overall, I gave it a 1 out of 10. I think it's just kind of we've seen better stuff for the time. I like that they did the differentiation between the two paddles, but we've seen it done better in Super Pong with the multicolor screen so that you ended up having different paddles. And it just doesn't really execute games well that everybody's doing. The tennis didn't look like it felt super great. So
Right.
I like the idea of this as an obscure console that you could have some fun with, but that's kind of the main value I'm seeing from it because it's not really something I would want to go back and play, I don't think. But that being said, definitely an interesting console to take a look at and see in the context of 76 how this console existed along with all the AY3 8500s that we're going to be looking at.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting one just because some of the changes that they had, I think could be very good. You take the AY3 8500 chip, but you make the squares different like they did here. That could be really a big improvement, or just different sounds like this one had. I think it had some good ideas. It just fell apart putting it all together, it seems.
Yeah, exactly. And even that rectangle scoring could be cool, and it's a novel, it's a different type of scoring. It just didn't really work well with these games or this system, I guess. So yeah, that is the Videotronic by Alpha. That's hope I didn't rail on them too hard. That's about all I got to say about it.
You were definitely a little harsher than I was, Wes, but maybe that's I've got a little bit more sympathy for some of these guys, I guess.
Right, yeah. I'll play bad cop in the timeline.
Yeah, that's fine. Let's move on from the consoles. We've got a couple arcade games here for the rest of the day. Let's start one off with a quick honorable mention. This one from my favorite games company, I think, for sure. Meadows Games, as you know, Wes.
Oh, of course. Drops on 4.
This one's called 4-in-1, which came out sometime in 76. It included tennis, hockey, knockout, and knockout doubles. And tennis and hockey are Flim Flam variants, I want to say. So Flim Flam, it's still living on, 76.
Wow.
Yeah. Knockout doubles I thought was really weird because it was kind of well, you remember how Knockout played with Ramtex,
Yes,
it was kind of a bunch of dots on the screen. You're kind of Pac-Man style trying to get rid of all the dots by hitting the ping pong ball up there. But this one, Knockout doubles, it seemed like it was 4 people at the bottom, kind of trying to work together to clear out everything.
That's pretty interesting.
Or maybe, I forget, it might have been 4 quadrants and they were either racing or trying to get them all. So it was kind of a different approach to it, which I thought was kind of interesting. So, despite the fact that we've kind of seen all those before, I was like, hey, you got 2 Flim Flam games and 2 Knockout games, which we kind of like Knockout in one machine. That's not that bad.
That's pretty good. It's different than just wrapping 4 different Pong games in the same console.
Yeah.
Or same arcade cabinet, rather.
Yeah, I do think this was probably one of theirs that was we don't have anything coming out this month. Let's just put some together,
Right, exactly, yeah.
So I kind of think that probably happened, but, I think they did an okay job. And then moving on to the big one, Wes.
Oh, the big one. I'm ready.
The big one, Death Race by Exidy. Oh my God, Wes. This is like right down my alley.
I'm so excited. Yeah.
Yeah. It's also known as Death Race 98, which I think they just had in a couple flyers, at the beginning of their advertising, but then dropped the 98 for some reason. And essentially, some backstory to this. If you can remember, was it 2 episodes ago I did? How far? Maybe 3 episodes ago? No, further. I don't know. But a while ago, I did Demolition Derby by Chicago Coin. And so what happened was Exidy made Destruction Derby, which was this, kind of Demolition Derby type game. And it sold really, really well. And they're like, we can't produce enough of these cabinets because they're flying out like hotcakes, So we're going to give it to Chicago Coin because, they'll pay us a bunch of money and they can make a lot more cabinets than we can. So Chicago Coin took Destruction Derby, they made it Demolition Derby and started making them, but then they went out of business. And they still had the rights to it. So Exidy couldn't make Destruction Derby again because Chicago Coin had the rights to it. So they're like, what can we do with this technology that's different enough that we could kind of sell it? And at the time, they just had hired a guy named Hal Ivey, the guy who made Clean Sweep, as as a couple other ones.
Yeah.
He used to work for Ramtech. Well, he's now at Exidy, and they're like, what can you do with this game, when he came? And he's like, let's make it so that instead of you running into other cars, you're running people over. So that's what this game is. It's basically a Demolition Derby type game, except instead of hitting other cars, you're hitting people. They're technically called gremlins.
Right. Yes.
But they look like stick figures, and they're running around, and you just have to run them over. And when you hit one, instead of it becoming like a pile of rubble, which is what it was, now it just turns into a cross.
Yeah.
So there's quite a bit to unpack here.
Yeah.
Honestly,
I like the theming that it's not really. I mean, you're the only car, right? So you're not racing against other people. It's the people running away from you are literally racing from death.
Yeah.
Is that the implication? Because I'm liking that.
Well, so basically the idea is that you're the Grim Reaper and you're trying to get these gremlins, I guess.
Gotcha.
There is a 2-player, like it is 2 players, so there can be 2 cars on the field.
Okay.
But otherwise, it's just you against the clock. How many people can you run over? But yeah, the reason why I love this so much is because of the theming. I mean, the cabinet looks incredible for this. And the flyers do as well. It's kind of like, I don't know, I want to say kind of like a comic book style artwork, but the cabinet, it's just got like these 2 skeleton dudes riding around in a car. You've got the Grim Reaper like on one side, he's by a graveyard, he's like ready to go. You've got like castles in the background. The actual title, Death Race, is in like bones, like that. The font style is bones.
Oh, nice,
it's so cool. I mean, everything about the style of it is like so well done. And the flyers were very similar. So that's like, you got to have this cabinet. It's like, I would put it up there with Maneater, It's like that high.
Yeah. Wow.
So yeah, it's super good. It's very detailed, very stylized, but just like, it looks so good. I can't say much more about it.
Look it up.
Yeah, look it up. It's good. So that's cool. And then the weird thing is the gameplay is really not changed at all from Destruction Derby. You're literally, just trying to run into things. The crosses, they do become barriers, just like the Piles of Rebel did previously. So you're still kind of dodging them as the game's playing out. So at the beginning, it's basically a blank screen. You still have 2 safe zones around the left and right side, which is what the last game had. But otherwise, once you hit somebody, they turn into a cross. And then that kind of becomes an obstacle that will slow you down and stop you if you hit it. Why don't I get into some of my ratings?
Oh yeah, I'm ready.
Let's start with graphics, because this is where I bumped it up quite a bit from Destruction Derby. For one thing, you've got the cabinet, and that alone's worth it. But the other thing is, they added actual little animations for the people running around. The car still looks kind of like a bug, and your player 2 car kind of still doesn't look that great, but
right.
Rather than you running into other cars, now you're running into people, and they have this kind of, I don't know, the animation almost looks like, I don't know, it looks like they're just freaking out. You know, their arms are waving really fast, their legs are moving really fast, but they're not moving that much, you know?
Right.
But they kind of look like they're spazzing out a bit. And, you know, being the Grim Reaper, I feel good about that. So, yeah, they look good. There's 2 on the screen at any one time, and you can have 2 cars and as many crosses as it takes. So, so, you know, I feel like there's a fair amount going on. And now that there's a little bit of animation there, it looks a little bit better. The crosses look very good. They even have like a little indication of some sort of ground that they're on, so it doesn't just look like they're laying in the middle of the sky or somewhere.
Yeah.
So I think everything looks pretty darn good. I don't think you could tell as much in the last game. The last game might have had this, but you know how in Maneater, the sharks, they actually turned, you know, whichever direction they were going?
Yes, yeah.
The sprites were a little bit different.
Mhm.
This one's the same, so that when people are running around, if they're running north and south, you get kind of a front-on view of them, and then if they're running sideways, you get kind of a sideways stick figure looking view.
Oh,
which
nice.
is pretty cool. Yeah. The car, I think, does it a little bit, but I want to say, I think it's only, I don't know. I think a car does it too, but it doesn't look quite as nice, and there's no real animation on the car, so it's not a big deal. But this one, there's animation on all those different kind of points of view, which is pretty cool. So yeah, I would say in general it just looks a little bit better. Everything looks very clean, it looks very themed, and the cabinet is worth a 3.5 out of 10 in my opinion for the graphics.
Yeah, all right.
Let's move on to gameplay. This one is the one where I kept it exactly the same as the last rating I gave, which was 2 out of 10, because it didn't change anything about game. I feel like this is the one area where they could have done something a little bit more. I understand that Death Race wasn't exactly the original wasn't exactly meant to be like the big blockbuster. That was their last game, and this was basically just Hal Ivey goofing off, I think. But yeah, so I think, you know, not as much attention was paid to this part of the game. So I really wish they would have added something, because all the game is you're against the clock, you're trying to run over AI. That's it. You know, there's nothing else.
Right.
So you play it once, you've seen everything that the game has to offer, and I feel like they could have done something a little bit more there. So I kept it 2 out of 10. And then for sound, I think I lowered it a little bit, 2 out of 10 here. You got really 2 main sounds. The good sound, I would say, is when you hit somebody, you get like a little bit of a screaming type sound.
Yeah.
Which is pretty, I'll talk about that in a sec, but it's actually pretty decent, I think. It doesn't sound like anything else in the video game, and it doesn't get on my nerves or anything like that, so I quite like it. The reason why I actually lowered the sound a little bit from the last game is because of the car sound. On this game, or at least the videos that I saw from it, the car sounds almost like lower pitched. I want to say they were going for more of like a truck type sound, you know, that was kind of a little bit more meaty or something like that. But I think it lost some of the exciting, you know, like how it kind of goes higher pitch the faster you go. On this one, I didn't get that quite as much, and so I kind of think the car sounded a little bit worse than the last one. I think they were going for like a more of a truck or monster truck type sound, but it just didn't really come through that well. So had to bump it down a little bit there. And then relevance, an 8 out of 10, Wes, for relevance. Here's why.
All right.
You already know why.
I do, yeah, but I'm excited to hear it.
Yeah, so this game stirred up a little bit of trouble. And when I say a little bit, I mean like a lot. You know, people found this game and they're like, wow, you're running people over. And yeah, people were like, wow, video games, they cause violence. And it was written about in newspapers all over the country. And even, like, I think even Hal Ivey and a lot of the Exidy developers and stuff, they would have to go on to interviews on TV and be like, have to defend their game, which in their credit, they were like, yeah, we think it's art, we like it, we're not backing down, which I think is great. Mm-hmm. But everybody was like, here, let me see if I can read you one of the quotes from one of these newspapers.
Oh, I'm so ready to to hear what it is.
It's, like this one, it has a photograph of a girl playing the game, and the caption above the newspaper is "Death Race" or "Death Wish."
Oh man.
Will chasing down pedestrians on a TV screen now encourage her to cut down pedestrians on a real highway?
There you go. That's all you need to do. There's 2 points on a graph. You just got to draw that line and you're good to go.
Yeah. I like how they even mentioned Gunfight, a gun game.
Yeah,
and they're like, well, this is different because you don't leave an arcade with a gun and go around shooting people, but you do leave an arcade and get into a car. So this was actually a fairly big deal at the time. I want to say, there was some sort of like government agency that got involved
Right.
at one point. What was that? Let me see if I can find it quick.
Would it have been the FCC?
It's the National Safety Council
Oh,
got
okay.
in. They
Wow.
called the game Sick and Morbid. And keep in mind, there's no blood. This is stick figures. They
Right.
say they're gremlins, and that could be the case, but they're stick figures. Like,
Right. I think
So,
Gremlins was a marketing choice there.
yeah, I think it was as well. But it was really interesting, and this had I think it's called the Barbra Streisand effect, right? But essentially, because all these newspaper articles came out on this game talking about it, it sold really well. They originally only made like a limited sort of production line of it. I think maybe 2,000 or 3,000 cabinets or whatever. But after all this publicity came in, they actually made another like 2,000 or 3,000 and sold them as well.
Wow.
Even overseas as well. So it was kind of like this weird cult hit because people were kind of afraid of it, and at the same time it was super cool. The artwork was like on point. So yeah, it made a pretty big indentation. I think it's the first ever game in all of video gaming history to people be like, this is causing violence, which, as we know, does
Right.
not go away, sadly. But
Yeah, or at least to create such a national sensation too. Like
Yeah.
if there was anything that was just smaller, we probably hadn't heard of it. But this was part of the reason this game is so big and so well known still today, is how much of a fuss it created.
Right, exactly. And I mean, maybe rightly so, because you are just running over pedestrians, but
Right. Yeah. I
I
mean,
will say it's pretty fun. So
yeah.
I was watching a YouTube video of someone playing it, and they're like, yeah, this is the first ever like GTA style game. I don't know, but
That's a little bit of a stretch, but
yeah.
it does have some similarities.
Yeah, so I thought, 8 out of 10, just because it does have its place in video gaming history. If you read a lot of old video gaming articles and stuff, Death Race comes up a fair amount just because it was so popular at the time and made such a fuss. So
Right.
being on TV, I don't think they would have been talking about Atari's latest game, but they're talking about Death Race. So for probably not the best reason, but
Right. They were talking about
it
though.
nonetheless.
Yeah.
And yeah, so overall I gave the game a 3.75 out of 10. I mean, obviously just get it because of the cabinet. I mean, the cabinet alone is worth getting this game, but
Right.
It's so like cool. It's so themed right down my alley too. Like I love like sort of this Halloween-y kind of style. It's not horror, it's more like Halloween, like kind of playful Scooby-Doo-esque,
Right. Yeah.
horror, I guess, but and I love that kind of style. So it reminds me of a while ago when we were doing our mystery games tournament. We did this like Michael Jackson one. I don't think were you
That's
playing
right.
that, Wes?
Yeah. I either commentated or played during it because I remember the game.
There was this one where Michael Jackson's like beating up zombies at like a level.
Yeah.
Like this is basically the same game, or same kind of theme. I mean, it's like so over the top and funny.
Yeah. It's
And
fantastic.
I love that for it. So I just wish, number one, they would have just kept the same sounds from the last game, other than the person shrieking, but the same car sounds.
Right.
It just sounded better. And then I wish they would improve the gameplay, which they really did not do. So, but graphically it was improved, and they need some credit there. But yeah, it's just like a pretty good game, honestly. I would love to play it in an arcade or something, and there are a couple around. People have
wow.
kept these games because,
Yeah.
how could you not? It's not emulated though, which I thought was pretty surprising.
Yeah, I'm surprised somebody didn't do that now. I mean, I guess it's one of those things too. In an emulation, it would probably feel like a little, maybe
Yeah,
a
it
little
would feel
stale.
weird.
Like, right? It's not as the whole experience is what makes that game what it is, I think.
And playing, it's meant to be played with a wheel peripheral, right? So playing
That's
on
true.
like a keyboard probably wouldn't feel as nice.
Probably wouldn't
so,
feel great either.
Yeah, I wasn't. I mean, I enjoyed just watching videos of it, but
Right.
Yeah, Death Race is definitely a very solid game. I just wish, just a little bit more to make it have a little bit like more replayability, I think,
Right. Yeah.
But it's definitely the one I would go into an arcade. I'd be like, I want to play that one.
Exactly. Oh yeah, yeah. It's got that appeal.
I probably wouldn't stay there all day playing it, but I'd play it once.
You got to play it once, yeah. So our next one is actually a Spanish release or clone of Death Race called The Monsters by Sonic. And this one, it's basically just a clone, but in the theme of Death Race, it has a real good flyer and a real good cabinet. It's just like goofy knockoff Death Race with like a bunch of Frankensteins all over it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it definitely looks pretty good. And then moving on from that, we have another honorable mention here. This one, we actually have a month release date. I should say, I don't think I mentioned this, but Death Race came out in April. April of 1976. So we're getting a third of the way through the year now. This next one also came out in April. This one's called Eliminator 4 by Electra/URL. And it's a drag racing game based around shifting gears at the right time, which I thought was very cool.
Yeah.
It looked a lot like Steeplechase, but there's no video of it. There's no emulation. I was just going off the flyers for that. So,
right.
But nonetheless, it sounds like a pretty cool thing. Eliminator 4 sounds like a cool name, so I'm down.
And next up, let's get to the last one that I got a chance to review. And this one's called Hit Me by Ramtech, which is Blackjack before. I mean, I didn't want to leave you in suspense too long that it's just a game called Hit Me. But this one came out also in April of 76, and it's a 4-player or 1-to-4-player Blackjack arcade cabinet. The original cabinet was actually pretty simple. It just kind of like that typical old school fake wood kind of body, but the face did have a pretty cool design with like a stylized 2 jacks, a king, and a queen in like the typical playing card colors and style. And the controls actually had little pictures and colored images of all the suits next to them, and they had different buttons for either to hit, to stand, or to ante up. And there was also a more interesting looking cocktail table version of this that basically just extended the area where you would where all the controls were out, so it was like a little mini table. And it was nice because in the cabinet, 4 people were you'd have like one arm in there looking at the screen, but this one you could put your drinks down because it's a cocktail table, and also you could actually like sort of wrap around the sides of it, which is pretty cool. It looks like it would have been fun. It's kind of helps simulate the experience of actually playing poker or playing blackjack. Well, either, but in this case, blackjack.
Yeah.
And so the gameplay, I'm not going to say too much about it. I will go over very briefly for those of you who don't know blackjack or 21. But basically, you ante at the beginning, which is you saying how much you're going to bet. You're dealt 2 cards. You see one card of the dealer, and the other dealer's card is face down. And you just have to decide whether you want to hit, which means they draw a random card and throw it on the top of your thing, and you try not to get over 21. Or if you want to stay, which is usually like, you got 19. You don't want to play it crazy, hope that you're getting an ace or something. So you stay, so you don't break 21. And then whoever's the highest, either with 21 or without breaking 21, wins the hand. And so this is exactly the same thing. An interesting thing about this is that it seems like there's a turn timer. I was having trouble figuring out the controls for how to ask for a hit, but if you waited, it actually just automatically hits you, which is kind of a little stressful, but kind of cool because you had to make your decisions fast, or else you would end up just like hitting on 20 and busting no matter what, unless you got an ace, basically.
Right.
So I like that. And also the turns kind of seem to move really quickly as far as like the dealer's turn. So that was a little bit confusing because it just like throws all this text at you and all these like cards are flying on the table and you're just like, what happened? And part of that, which I'll get into in the graphics in just a sec, is because the screen is a little cluttered. But so this one, I thought it would be best just to get straight into the ratings with it. For graphics, I gave it a 2 out of 10. I really would have loved color. The whole thing's black and white, and maybe a bit more design on the cards. But what they did is pretty cool because we haven't really seen something like it in an arcade cabinet yet. Basically, a white card shows up, the whole background of the screen is black, and it has a little thing in the top corner for what the suit is, and then also the number, which when you're playing blackjack, I mean, that's really all you need anyway. Mm-hmm. And even though they do look pretty nice, that's kind of all there is going on. The cards are the real visual appeal of this cabinet. Everything else is just text, which takes up a lot of the screen. And it's definitely necessary because it helps you understand everything that's going on. Like it tells you whether you're going to bust, what your ante is, what current total like amount of chips are, and stuff like that. So it's all valuable information, but it doesn't really have much visual interest to it because it's all just white text on a black screen. Other than that, as far as graphics, on the like title screen or the before you put the quarter in screen, there is a nice just like giant text that says "hit me," and it's made out of all the different symbols of the suits. So that's pretty cool. And it's nice that part of the reason I think that it's simple is that because it's a 4-player game, at some points you could have like 20 cards on the screen all stacked up on top of each other. So it is a lot for an arcade cabinet at the time to be render's probably not the right word, but to be displaying. So I think that's part of the reason that they couldn't get into a little bit more finer or more fine detail with it. And so for sound, I gave it a 1.5 out of 10. There's about 3 or 4 different tone beeps used throughout the game, but they're all just kind of beeps. It's nothing exciting, but they're not annoying either. It would have been nice though if and I don't know how hard this would have been to do on a cabinet at the time, but like kind of a card hitting the table sound, or like say you win a hand and then maybe like clinking coins, but everything's kind of just like a beep with a different tone. A card goes down, then it's like boop, and then you bet, and it goes beep, and that's about it. So it was weird. It kind of made the experience a little bit more sterile, and maybe that's because I like playing cards in real life so much. But
right,
it was a little weird how that translated to just all those beeps and boops for a blackjack game. And so getting on to the gameplay, I gave it a 2 out of 10 for gameplay, not super high. It's simulated blackjack, so basically if you like blackjack, I think you're probably going to have a pretty decent time with this because it does a good job of just showing you blackjack and letting you play back blackjack on a arcade machine, which I don't think we've really seen. And some weird things though that kind of detracted from the gameplay for me. On that title screen that says "hit me," it also says "how high can you score," like kind of taunting you to play. But as far as I could tell, there's no score screen or like a high score tracker, which I don't think is something we've really seen. It might not be an arcade thing yet, but it just seems a little weird because it's like, how high can you score? It's challenging you, but also you're the only person who's keeping track of that. So I don't know. I mean, you're tracking your own personal best when you're doing this, whatever.
Like, how do you set? Is it a certain number of hands before a game over happens?
Yes, yeah. That is. I should have mentioned that in the gameplay section because that is different than normal blackjack. It's just 5 hands, and
weird.
Yeah. You run out of chips, which didn't happen to me because I was always betting real conservatively. But I'm guessing if you run out of chips, you just lose as well because I don't think you'd be able to. Mm-hmm. I forget actual like legitimate blackjack rules. I'm not sure if there's a way to play without betting and then to win or anything like that. I doubt it though. So
I guess like the high score would be going all in 5 times and winning every one.
Yeah. Going all in 5 times, winning every single one would be the high score. So that also means if you do that, I mean, it's kind of like bowling a 300, like it's all the same score, but reaching that would be like,
right.
I did the best. So there is definitely a benchmark that you can measure yourself up against with that. And also, I don't know if this is different in a casino setting because I only played blackjack in casino once, and we were getting babied the whole time because the dealer knew that we didn't know what the heck was going on. Played in Vegas, and my dad was like, "Hey, go easy on us. We don't know like what the heck we're doing," and it was true. But the way I played blackjack is everybody on the table has 1 card face down and 1 card face up, like the dealer does in this version. But I realized since you're all sharing the same screen in this version, that means everybody's cards are all face up.
Right.
Which seems a little weird because that kind of, and I think there are, I might be BSing a little bit. I thought there were versions that you do play like that, but it just feels like it takes a little bit of the strategy or like the random element or trying to plan around what other people could have if the only person you're playing against is the dealer. But I guess that's part of it. I think in this version, everyone's against the dealer. You're not necessarily playing against the person next to you. Like if you get 20, the other person gets 21, but the dealer has 19. I think the dealer still pays out to both of you.
Oh, okay. That makes sense, I guess.
Yeah. So it's just kind of a different, and maybe that's the way to play it when you have a dedicated dealer when like the house is playing. But it just seems a little weird. I always like the version where kind of everyone's in the dark about what everyone else might have. And so for the relevance, I gave it a 5 out of 10. I don't think it's anything crazy, but I do like seeing a video game adaptation of a card game. And I'm pretty sure we haven't seen that represented visually yet in the timeline. I think I'm sure we've seen text games of card games on computers, or at least there's been some, even if we haven't gone in depth to them. But actually seeing like, cards on a screen, we're moving forward, and it's still pretty far from flashing video gambling machines at casinos, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see like a lot of these kind of arcade cabinets as we go through the timeline.
Yeah.
Just because it's something that a lot of people identify with, and playing cards, and same as we see like board games getting made into video games, this is people saying, oh, let's take something relatable that people like and try to make it into a video game. So it's definitely cool to see that this was done with this blackjack cabinet. So overall, I gave it a 2 out of 10. I think it's really cool to see blackjack in video game form. I don't know if I really feel like this arcade game was great, but it played blackjack, it did it well, and I'm sure that was really exciting at the time. So I'll be really excited in the future to see if there's color inversions, because even just the red for the hearts and the diamonds would be nice, or just something small like that, because everything was just kind of black for all the suits. So yeah, I'm maybe this one isn't the one that blew me away, but I think there's going to be some cool ones in the future that are really going to iterate on this and add more video game adaptations of card games.
Yeah, definitely. I will say real quickly, slot machines we are not covering in our timeline. Right. And like this is very close to it. So I kept it on obviously because it's definitely a video game and no one's like betting real money. I don't think in this. And also it's by Ramtech, which is definitely I would consider a video game company. So I definitely wanted to cover it, but yeah, I don't know what the next one might look like, because it might be a slot, like a real slot machine. I'm not sure. That's
true. And that could be where all the innovations are at some point. I'm sure it will diverge a little bit, and then everything will be in that side of it, so we won't necessarily see all of those. But
yeah, I mean, we'll definitely see other card games and stuff. Like, I was actually, did you know there's a video game Hall of Fame, Wes?
I mean, that sounds like something that exists, but I didn't really know.
Yeah.
No.
I just found it actually a couple of weeks ago, and it's only been around 4 years. So there's only like 20 something games in the like Hall of Fame.
Okay.
But real quick, Oregon Trail is there.
Oh, hell yeah.
The one you played.
Yeah.
Pong's there, obviously. I think maybe one or two others that we have played is on there. But Microsoft Solitaire is on there, which I thought was hilarious. I was like, that's so good.
It's such an iconic game. I mean, because it's just like, you're bored, you're like 12 years old, and you don't have anything to actually play, so you're playing solitaire on the computer or something. I love it. Yeah. That's awesome.
And so I feel like this is the roots of that, man. It's the first time, like you mentioned, we're ever seeing like an actual kind of card.
Right, yeah, a visual display of a card.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, kind of cool. Pretty cool.
It's definitely a cool one. Yeah, it's the actual playing it where you're like, okay, well, this is kind of just video blackjack, but a lot of cool stuff that they did with it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's, again, one of those where, like, it's the first implementation of something like this, so it doesn't do it the best, but these are, like, brand new things. Like, all of those, like, keeping track of the money and the ante and all the cards, like, that's a lot of, like, things to happen for the very first time. So, definitely a cool one. I like that one. I don't know. I mean, I probably wouldn't like playing it, but I like listening.
It's got a cool theme to it. It's got a good story.
Yeah. And the cocktail table.
Oh, yeah. So that looks awesome. That's something you need in your house.
Yeah. No, I don't. Let's move on. We got one honorable mention here, and then we are going to be done for the day. This last one is Quiz Show by Atari. They're getting in on the trivia type games, but we don't really have much info on this one. It was, I think, all text-based, so I don't know how much fun that would really be. But I do think you got like free games if you guessed enough questions right and stuff. So
There you go.
maybe it was cool.
That always makes me feel or realize how spoiled we are by stuff like Steam Workshop. Like this thing might have had like, I don't know, 100 question max or something.
Right.
And that might be generous. And you go there and play it like, I don't know, couple weeks, couple days in a row. You're like, okay, well, I know every single question.
Yeah. I do think it had, I want to say it had like 250 questions, like a fair amount, but
Okay, yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
it's
that's
not
pretty
like
decent
like
then.
Steam
Yeah.
could be like unlimited, you know.
Right. But still, that's actually pretty good. I mean, you'd have to dedicate yourself to learning all the questions. So 250 is a good amount.
Yeah, I'm sure some. I mean, it's a basic trivia, so some you would just know right off. You know, you would. I don't think it's just like Jeopardy level questions or anything.
Right. Yeah.
It wasn't like, what was that? There was a Magnavox game called States, if you remember, and it was like, what's the state bird of Alaska? And you're like, what the heck kind of question is this?
Yeah.
I don't think it was like that. So yeah, that's gonna do it for us today. I hope you guys enjoyed learning about the Odyssey 300, the Videotronic Alpha, Death Race. I mean, come on, Skeletons. I'm in. And then Hit Me by Ram Tech. We also talked about Apple and Apple One. That's going. So personal computers are literally right down the road, and that's going to open up an entirely new market for video games, and that's so cool. Yeah. Because right now it's basically just a bunch of nerds at college making games, but...
Right, which we love, but we'll be happy to see it.
Anybody.
Yeah, any nerd. They don't have to be in college.
Exactly.
So make sure to check us out on Twitter. Send us a tweet if you want to let us know anything, or send us an email too. And check out our website. We got tons of stuff on there if you want to go back, revisit some of the stuff we've done before, or see a little bit more detail and a recap of how we reviewed some of the early games that we did.
Yeah, maybe I can get a nice picture of Death Race on there so you can check that out.
Oh, there you go.
So we will see you guys next time. Will this be out by Christmas? I've got no clue, but if it's around that time, happy Christmas, happy Merry Holidays. So
yeah.
I don't know what the schedule for release is going to be like around that time, but hopefully it'll be decent. So
we'll figure something out. Yeah.
So we'll see you in the next one. Have a great holiday. Wes, you've been awesome.
And you've been awesome, Ben. See you guys in the next one.
See you in the next one.